Newgarden around the outside. This is mind-blowing. Is it possible? No, it's not. Contact. Both of them crashing.
Emilio Castro-Neves comes to the start-finish line. Quit checkers out, and then there were four. Emilio Castro-Neves joins the four-time winners club.
Welcome, race fans, to another episode of the More Than May podcast. My name is Jake Langdon.
And I'm Alan Langdon.
And a little bit of a disappointing weekend at Long Beach. I know that the hybrids have been really hurting the racing here. We at least had a lead change, but that's about all I can say about the weekend. You know, there has been some changes to the broadcast when it comes to the qualifying format, as well as changing to the actual qualifying format. So there's still some good takeaways, but overall, what are your takeaways from the race, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, disappointing but not surprising. I think with Arlington being a good race, and then obviously our oval packages being surprisingly pleasant, there was maybe some hope that we had gotten over all the boogeymen of the hybrid car kind of being uncompetitive. But I think with Barber and this back-to-back, it's evident that a new chassis refresh is as needed as ever.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of just one of the long-term impacts of the hybrid is that you can't pass. And when you're on these tight road courses, tight street courses that require, a lot of that push to pass, everything to be working your way, when you have this extra weight just slowing all the cars down and that extra boost to defend, having not only the push to pass to defend, but also the hybrid, I think it has really just made it difficult for people to pass. And, you saw Newgarden really try to make that pass and on newer tires and everything, and he still put a huge bald spot in his tire and ended up pretty much ruining his race. And you're like, you have all these things happening for just a driver with a clear advantage still to not be able to get past. So it really is frustrating. And unfortunately, the crown jewel outside of the Indy 500 is not producing like it should when it comes to that. I mean, luckily the event is still good, but we need a new chassis, I think, before this real racing product improves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so kind of looking at the weekend, starting with Quals, practice was fairly uneventful, just a few people running into some tires, but overall just pretty standard stuff. But really, we went back to this the Fast Six last chance kind of qualifying model where each guy gets a run on a clean track, and I believe it was whoever finished the fastest from the Fast 12 got to go first. So you get that slight advantage of your car just being a slightly warmer, or your tires being warmer. I don't know if it's necessarily better for your car to be warmer. I know with the 500 qualifying, there's kind of some cool down mechanisms they try to do with those cool down laps. So either way, it is an advantage to go out there, and because you have a little bit more warmth in the tires. But anyway, Felix Rosenqvist ended up taking it, and we kind of had, along with this new format, they've continued to improve the broadcast package. And what they did this time was the ghost cars, and they used it throughout the other rounds as well to kind of provide an insight into where guys are. So I know they used it between Dixon and Power at one point. And I thought it was a great usage of it. I know they've done that at 500 before, but to see it on a road course and a street course was really cool.
Yeah, agreed. And we talked too with increased visibility. I mean, from the first broadcast of the day, it's been subtle, but like definite changes in terms of like splits in each qualifying section. There's been now sector times with like red, like purple, which is their best. It was like red worse, or like kind of yellow the same. So I think it's more and more now. I think there's still room for improvement in terms of like giving fans the ultimate visibility into what qualifying is. I think outside of like an oval where you can kind of see all four turns, it is kind of hard to track like where a car and how it's doing on a road course, because it's like so many different angles. You kind of forget where they're at on the track. Mm-hmm. That being said, I think it's worthwhile mentioning that both the first rounds were almost equally as entertaining as the last rounds of the Fast 12 and Fast 6. There was a lot of, I think it's been really interesting to see like that kind of mix of the time-based qualifying for the first couple rounds and then the one shots for the Fast 6, because it does have moments like what Dixon did and basically bumped Will Power in the last second. You have those kind of buzzer beater type moves. Then you build suspense for the Fast Six. So I think IndyCar's qualifying formula for these road courses is really unique, and it's really kind of producing some good content.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest fixes right now is I think you need to have a map, like you said, kind of just tracking where everyone is on their lap, and then like during that Fast Six, and then I think having those sector times that they showed more during the actual Fast 12 in the first round of quals than they did during the Fast Six. I'm like, those would be cool to see as well, because then you can see, oh well, he did, like I mentioned it last time at the Olympics on the downhill skiing. It's like, oh, you can see like he may have been worse on the first sector, but he made up time in the second sector to kind of get a better ebb and flow of where they're actually at, more than, I mean, because you're talking about tenths, hundredths of a second, which is where those guys came down to. And then, yeah, I mean, those are really small fixes I think they can implement pretty quickly, but it definitely made for better television.
Agreed.
Yeah, and then really, Rosenqvist got on pole, and Palou qualified third, and he locked it up in the second to last turn there, and it's pretty crazy that he was still able to go there, but obviously had probably the best car in the field. O'Ward was able to out-qualify him as well, but he did quick work of O'Ward at the start of the race. So overall, like, not surprising to see Palou end up on top. I don't know if we mentioned that. I think that's kind of a given at this point. But anyway, hopping into the race itself, started out with one of the oddest formations I've ever seen. Will Power came off the corner, got away with one with how slow he was able to go, and really it was like he was leader when it came to the start, because by the time I think it was like the first six people, I guess, because he started seventh, got to the line, they were nowhere to be found. I mean, they were able to catch up pretty quickly, but pretty odd situation there.
Yeah, I mean, there was some folks in the broadcast kind of mentioned it as like a strategic move to save tires. And again, I can't imagine that Will Power, being in this series for decades, would like be one to get slipped on a restart. Like, I think he's been done this enough times. So could have been a combination of things, even like a miscommunication with the spotters and whatnot. But yeah, it was a bit bizarre to see him kind of hold up most of the field. But by the time he got to like turn 3 and 4, he was pretty much part of the pack. So no major issues there. I mean, I can imagine if that was like farther back in the field, you might have a Stingray Rob type scenario with cars piling up. But those guys up there are pretty well established and competent. So no harm, no foul.
Yeah, so really uneventful from there. No cautions to start. You know, like I said, Palou was able to make a good move on O'Ward early on. O'Ward was a little angry in his radio chatter, saying, you know, he's like, you got to let me know that guy's there, which I think is totally fair.
But again, you know, I mean, I guess the counter argument is like, it's lap 2. Like, what do you think Palou is doing at this point? I mean, he's always gonna be in your rearview mirror.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he was able to slip by him, and then outside of that, pretty uneventful stint. And then we get to around the first pit stops. You know, Rosenqvist has a slight lead, comes in, clean pit stop, no problem. You know, this was they mandated 2 red stints this time, so slightly different. But honestly, when everyone's on 2 red stints, I don't really like it. I feel like it's too, like, they're trying to structure it too much, especially when the race length where it's at right now, as we'll get to later. I'm not going to get too far into that, but the 2 red stints, I don't really know if that's the right solution at this point. But anyway, first stint, and then the first real incident we saw was Ericsson, who, you know, obviously qualified a little disappointing in 15th, had his hybrid go out, which we haven't seen in quite a while. I know, obviously, Dixon had the first incident with it on that first weekend, and there's been a few issues here and there. Obviously, it's the spec part, and they're really not allowed to tamper with it because of the electricity and everything. So just frustrating for him, and kind of gives you flashbacks to his luck last year. Is, you know, I was looking through my Indy GP notes, and he had a mechanical failure at the Indy GP last year, so frustrating for him.
Yeah, I don't think they have formally diagnosed. I know back in the olden days of the hybrids, like, heat was a factor. I do know he also kind of ended up with some contact in the rear a couple times, being in the end of the field like that. So maybe being that close to the attenuator in that part of the rear of the vehicle could have cause issues. But yeah, I mean, certainly a bummer. I mean, you talk about Andretti being a good like straight course type of team, and Ericsson being not necessarily a favorite for the win, but definitely a favorite for a top 10. And to get nothing out of that's pretty disappointing. So
yeah, next really guy I want to look at is Newgarden. So he opted to try to go for the 3-stop, which means that he was going to push on not have to fuel save at all and really push as much as he could and run qualifying laps. And through the second stint, he got more camera time than the leaders. It was kind of crazy. And anytime they do that, it seems to go awry. I know we've done that with Dixon before, and I think he had a bad pit stop right at St. Pete's. So for some reason, they've been cursed when trying to cover these, when trying to run these alternate strategies. But unfortunately, yeah, he tried to. I mean, it was kind of on him. He tried to really get past Armstrong on better tires, like I mentioned before, and put a big bald spot in his tire, and really ended up having to pit with the rest of the field on lap 60, finishing in 14th, right where he started. So was able to salvage what was left of the day, but he probably would have been better off just sticking to the plan that everyone else was on. So kind of sad to see the alternate strategy fall like that.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, it was just, even with the better setup, it's just so hard to pass cars on that track. And it does kind of, again, really discourage teams and drivers from pushing alternate strategies when it is like the status quo is going to get you where it's more or less what you started. So a bummer there. I mean, I know when they kind of double down on tire restrictions last year with the proposal of minimum requirements for a certain type of tires. I know a couple drivers like Dixon had kind of hinted at this is going to affect strategy, which I think at the time we were just looking for something that was a mix up. But to your point now, it's if there's you restrict things too much, you're going to get cookie cutter strategies, which is a bit unfortunate. We'll get to in a second with the tires, where you just kind of see everyone doing the same thing, and that as you continue to strip variables, it removes the idea of what can set you apart in the race. Which for this theme, it was pits was the only really differentiator.
Yeah, when you're in a spec series, it's you have to give them some freedom, or else you're going to end up with a parade, especially with the way the cars are racing right now. I mean, you think about all the tools, you have the push to pass, the dampers, all these things that they have a chance to really make a difference. And then, strategy is one of the main things that get you wins in this series. And especially when you're not the best car on the day, and taking away that and any restrictions, we've debated this for years as they've gone back and forth with the green tires and the red tires and everything. And it really just, I don't think that any of the changes they made to restrict have really helped.
Yeah. So moving on past Newgarden, I think one thing I mentioned before was that pits were a key differentiator here, where Palou ended up +1 due to the pits, and Dixon +3. So two Ganassi teams, again, with those squads being the upper echelon and probably having the highest level of staff, made some meaningful pushes. But I would argue, too, that despite Rosenqvist being in a Myers tank, his team really held their own. I didn't appreciate it as much until they mentioned in the broadcast, but Fro's team is probably one of the top 5 in terms of pit crew quality. And if you're Myers tank, that makes sense. I mean, you kind of what differentiating factors can you control, and you're not going to have the data, the prestige, maybe the technical capabilities that a Penske and Ganassi may have, but you can control a pit crew. If you pay those guys well, or to make it competitive enough, then that can help you compete. Because I know one thing I brought up before, I mean, especially in the 500, you see guys like Carpenter that can qualify fast, have decent race pace, but when your pit stops are consistently 2-3 seconds more than the rest of the pack, that adds up a lot over the series, over the course of a race. So interesting to see that become a factor on the positive end, where earlier this year with Andretti, it's been the negative end of missed tires or missed nuts, where it's even more devastating. But pits have definitely been a theme this year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously him getting past there on that last stint, it really, I mean, you look at the timing, and I believe Palou, he had a blistering pace, I mean, a 7.3, and Rosenqvist had an 8.4, and if that would have been under a green flag, I think he holds court pretty easily there. I mean, obviously when everyone's coming and you're this close to each other coming to the pits versus, a second or two buffer that he would have had under a green flag scenario, it clearly made the difference, and it's frustrating to him because, I mean, all it was it looked like the bottom of Rossi's attenuator came off and was just bouncing around a piece of carbon fiber, and obviously can't have that on the track. So it made sense to throw the caution, but it just feels like between him and Lundgaard the last 2 races, it's like, how can we, like, these guys are racing perfectly and doing everything possible to get the strategies they're running and everything to work, and it all comes falling apart right into Palou's lap. And it's like, you give Palou an inch, he takes a mile, and that's how he's been for the last 2 years. I mean, he's won 11 of the last 22 races in the series dating back to the start of last season. I mean, just under 50% of his races he started in, including his time at Dale Coyne, have been podiums. I mean, everything this guy does is just domination, but for me, it's just, how is this guy just every time that there's an inch of time? I mean, like, there's very few people very few pit crews on the whole field that I think could have made up that time, and he's definitely on that short list with the 10s.
Yeah, and I think one factor to consider as well is that pit placements for non-500 are determined based on previous races' results. So Palou, again, being the leader and having consistent wins this year, basically had the pick of the litter in terms of where he had his pit box. And if you're racing, the ideal is the very front. So you get to be past all the crew, and you have a free launch out. That's a good towards point. Yeah. That straight, which is the exit of pit lane. So not to say I wouldn't add a couple seconds, but I think it's a variable they're not going to track on the pit time exactly, is that he can just launch it. I think other pit news, Will Power had a decent day, both qualifying and racing. Ended up with a pretty nasty penalty for making contact with Kyle Collette's left rear tire changer. Fortunately, no major injuries on that end. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear on that one. If you do run into an opposing team's pit crew, that's a pretty nasty penalty. So he ended up towards the back of the field on that.
Yeah, I mean, he was apologetic, but he said that I think it was probably a ward was in his way. He just couldn't get, he didn't have enough room to fully enter the pits from that pit lane is just so tight, and that those 2 lanes, people are really elbows out. So I don't think the blame really is anyone. I think it's just unfortunate incident and part of, the dangers of being in a pit lane, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, outside of him, Dixon was able to make up 3 spots. He didn't make a pass all day on the track, but he was able to finish 3rd despite that, which is pretty absurd. Malukas had a slower stop, which put him down to 8th. So it was kind of like all these guys were racing well, and it's like it was out of their control where they finished. Kind of an odd scenario where, Dixon, Malukas, Rosenqvist all moved around where they, under normal circumstances that wouldn't have happened. And then outside of that, Lundgaard had a tire issue, which caused him to have an extra stop. So someone who obviously 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago was right there, unfortunately has to face a bad result. What did he end up finishing? Let me look. 20th, starting from 11th. So that just shows you, man. I mean, obviously Palou has a DNF this year, yet he's still up 17 points in the standings. Like, these teams and these issues that you have that just feel like racing incidents, he somehow seems to avoid, and it just makes the margins that much thinner.
Yeah. And then closing out kind of the race activities outside of tire strategy. So IndyCar officiating post-race did announce not say penalty, but just a judgment call. So stop me if this sounds familiar, but the number 12 car was caught utilizing push to pass during a restart, which, again, according to Rule 14.19.16, is not allowed. In this case, there was not a penalty given to Team Penske because it was discussed as a software issue, where a couple other teams also had access to this push to pass ability during a non-allowed time. But definitely some reminders that the IndyCar officiating team is keeping track of these things, and it is reassuring to see that, okay, like, there's other bits of it. But yeah, it was a bit of deja vu seeing that on the newsreel.
Yeah, you misread it. 12 cars, not the number 12 car.
Okay.
I like where your mind is moving, but yeah, so the statement, it obviously there was a malfunction. There wasn't malicious act like there was when Penske had the push to pass issue where they had it going through their own system versus the system that the officials run. And what happened is, which is kind of funny, is that a lot of people press the button, and that goes back to, oh, well, would you have pressed it if you knew it was there, which was a big part of like the attack on McLaughlin and Newgarden. And you look at this here, and that's pretty funny to me that there was one pass on track that Armstrong was able to get by Ferrucci, but apparently they were both using it. So it's like it's pretty absurd to me that they were that this all happened, and it kind of proves that, you know, in some ways Newgarden was right. You know, maybe he didn't know that it was happening, but someone did, and that's the, you know, I obviously, I don't know. I don't know how to view that. It definitely puts that incident from last year into perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta imagine, like, if you're a driver and triggers like push to pass are like instinctual, you're not gonna really think about that.
Yeah, but
and you rely on software, where it's like you just kind of like a second habit of like click the button.
Yeah.
Like you would change a gear and that kind of thing. But yeah, it is it's the breakdown was again fairly amusing. But yeah, no harm, no foul. And we'll see how IndyCar as a officiating team will try to track down that issue going forward.
Yeah, I didn't even know that could happen, but pretty strange. Yeah. Anyway, so looking at the strategy, we're not going to spend too much time on this. You know, a lot of the guys at the top of the field started on reds, while most of the bottom started on blacks. You know, you get Newgarden coming off the blacks pretty early, which is interesting because I think some people did like the blacks. I know Palou liked them a good amount. So, you know, he ran the scuff blacks here at the end and was plenty fast. I think he ended up winning by almost 5 seconds after getting by Rosenqvist. But I mean, yeah, everyone came in on lap 29, and then everyone came in on lap 59. So there's really not much to write home about. I mean, it's just wherever you put your black stint, and with the way people weren't really able to get around each other, and I think both tires were running pretty similarly, I didn't really know how much it mattered. So
yeah, to your point, like Rosenqvist and Palou both did red, red, black. Kirkwood and Award both did red, red, black. So like those, like, what are 4 of the top 5 all have the same exact strategy. Dixon with the exception.
And they started there. I mean, they all started like in the top 5, so there wasn't that much movement.
Correct. Yeah, so it was disappointing. It's like usually the Firestone Racing, the graphics pretty interesting to see like the different like strategies and positionings. But to Jake's point, it's just a straight line at each key point during pits. So yeah, there's not much else to write home about on that one, unfortunately.
Hey, Ferrucci, fastest lap. Anyway, a few shout-outs. Nolan Siegel, P25 to P12. Really impressive day from him. You know, we've not exactly been the kindest to him the last few weeks, so I feel like he deserves that shout-out. Outside of him, I mean, obviously Scott Dixon getting back on track 2 weeks in a row, but really complete weekend by him, qualifying and race speed. Overall, yeah, Rahal, top 10, you know, qualifying and finish again 2 weeks in a row. Rossi, I believe, got his 100th top 10 ever, so good for him. And yeah, transitioning into the standings, what you'll notice is that Graham Rahal is in 10th. And what, Alan, you said he was in 19th and 18th the last 2 years?
Yeah. He's finishing consistently. It's like, I think it was like 19, 18, 15 were the last 3 finishes for Rahal. Yeah. And I haven't done a deeper research, but I would not be surprised if like a Rahal, Coyne, Foyt, like those level of teams haven't had a top 10 finisher.
I mean, maybe Lundgaard when he ran that race at Toronto that year, was it 2023? That would have been the best from that group. I can think of. I know ECR. I think Rossi was around 10 last year. These Meyer-Shank teams, team cars, obviously hold their own as well.
But yeah, that goes to show. I mean, he's still competing with a lot of these bigger teams, and even more so when like both of his teammates are near the bottom, with Louis Foster in 19th and what is it, Mick in 24th. So it's not like he's got superior machinery by any superior the imagination. He's just really finding speed right now.
Yeah, and coming into a races we'll get to in the Indy GP that they're the best at out of any track on the schedule. I really think that he's got a chance to put together a decent season here. Obviously, the 500 hasn't been as kind to them, but they showed a lot of improvements last year.
Yeah, and to, I guess, round out the top 10, we mentioned Palou is back in the lead. It was, I think, there's a stat, I think it was like 2023 in Texas was the last time like he wasn't in the lead or something crazy. So it's looking back
he gave
to
up the lead in the last couple weeks. He just retook it.
Yeah. I was saying like before that, like restarting his streak back to the top. But I mean, Kirkwood's only 17 behind. It is pretty devastating though, because you look at like the stats. Kirkwood's gotten 5 starts and 5 top 5s. I mean, I think you like most and a win with all that. I mean, look at most other years, like that's a pretty solid, if not flawless, start. But Palou's 3 wins,
especially with Palou having a DNF on top of that all.
Like, yeah, and it's just like it just shows you need to be above what appears to be humanly possible. But you move on to David Malukas, which is again, he's in a Penske team, but it's a good feeling. I mean, to have like new team with it being Penske, but big shoes to fill with the 12 car. Super impressed to see that. Pato and the McLaren team has been putting more consistent results that aren't ovals, so good to see him up there. And then Newgarden wraps up the top 5, so a good diversity of teams there. And then moving on, you've got Newgarden in 6th, McLaughlin 7th, Dixon climbed up to 8th with his podium finish, Rosenqvist in 9th, the same, and then you said Ray Hall in 10th. So a lot of the similar crew, good distribution to the top, but
yeah, and we have a championship
like,
race. We have it. I know it doesn't.
It
feel
isn't
like
100 points yet. So
yeah. Anyway, just a few news points. Jacob Abel and Abel Motorsports are confirmed for the Indy 500 as we predicted, and that gets us to 32 entries. They will be in a Chevy engine lease in the number 51 car, and which is kind of funny because that's what he ran at Dale Coyne last year, right? So anyway, Dale Coyne changed their number setup, but so the last time Abel Motorsports was in the Indy 500 was in 2023 with RC Enerson. They made the show, but his engine expired about 25 or so laps into the race, and that was the last we saw of him. So, interesting to see another one-off team back, and honestly, I'm excited for it, especially in a Chevy engine that actually has some pace. Hopefully, I mean, obviously, there's not going to be any bumping, but hopefully Abel can find a little bit of pride after getting bumped last year and finishing dead last in the series.
Yeah. So as Jake mentioned, that still only gets us to 32. There's, again, enough teams like a Juncos, Foyt, or Coyne that have kind of teased the idea of, like, if someone needs to make it 33, they'll make it 33. But we are getting eerily close to testing day at the track, which is next Tuesday, April 28th.
Yeah. So, I mean, my understanding is that it's still Foyt and Leg. I don't know if that's going to be confirmed soon. By the time this starts, I have no idea. I would assume that you'd want to get back in there and get that practice session in. But if you miss it, you can still recover from that time lost, especially in a Chevy engine. But anyway, looking at that open test. So Tuesday, April 28th, veteran oval drivers will take the track from 10 to 12, and then rookie orientation and oval refreshers will take place from 12 to 2. So oval drivers, that haven't raced a race since the 500. So Sato, Hunter Ray, Elio, guys like that will have to come back and do this. And then they have an open practice from 2 to 6, and the gates are open from 9 to 6 that day. So if you're got nothing better to do, and then the next day, Wednesday, they've got 2 open sessions from 10 to 12 and 1 to 5. So a little happy hour for you, and then again 9 to 5 open gates. So if you got no work, right?
the true diehards making it out there for the pre-practices or warm-ups and everything. So
yeah, but cars on track, it feels like May, so we're getting pretty close. But anyway, looking ahead, let's get a little preview of is it still the Sancio Grand Prix? Let me look.
Correct. It is the Sancio Grand Prix.
We got the Sancio Grand Prix here, 2026. I wouldn't call it my favorite race in the schedule, but it is a race I've been to a couple times. It'll be May 9th at what time?
4:30.
4:30 on Fox. So looking at this race last year, Palou has won 4 of the last 5. I mean, wow, like that's not a stat.
You needed a glimmer of hope. That is not it.
Yeah, after winning his first time at Long Beach, he kind of has done everything in the series now. It's just all how many of these can he pile up? How many Long Beach wins? How many Indy 500 wins? How many series championships, right? And he's really chasing. The sky's the limit with him, and he's really chasing everybody. So, yeah, I mean, and the guy that so Palou won in 2025, 2024, 2023. And then Dixon won that was when they had the doubleheader with NASCAR. The Gallagher Grand Prix was called in 2023. And then Herta and Rossi both won the 2022 runnings. And then actually Rinus VK's only win was here in 2021. So pretty interesting selection here. Obviously, I mean, you'd be out of your mind and not choose Palou, even if he doesn't qualify in the top 10.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what the odds are from a sportsbook perspective.
Yeah.
You'd be losing money trying that. But one bit of intrigue, though, is that the Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan team they perform well at this track. Look at last year, Rahal qualified second, Foster third, and Devlin DiFrancesco made his opportunity to the Fast 6. So that they've clearly got a good setup there. I believe not too long ago they hired an engineer from a former Formula One team, which again this track is built to FIA standards, which was designed for the F1 race back in the early 2000s. So it does.
Yeah, I got my Ferrari shirt from Dad. Thanks, Dad.
I think it's definitely the most polished, and you think that Schumacher came from Formula One roots, it might be a chance for him to turn his what's more or less been a lackluster season around, second to last in points right now. So not to say they'll make a chance for the win, but should hopefully bring some shuffles within the broader of the field.
I think all eyes will be on them because of how good Rahal has been these last 2 races, and on top of that, Schumacher. I mean, the rookies in general haven't really been super impressive. I mean, Hauger had a decent performance, a P12, P11 this weekend, and then Collette, I believe, has had one top 10 maybe. So really, none of them have been in any spotlight. So it'll be a chance for him to maybe make a dent into the deficit he has for the Rookie of the Year. But yeah, looking into some of the what happened last year, they were, like you said, qualified 2, 3, and 5. Graham was really fighting, and this was the second time he's been like this when it comes to the Indy GP, and unfortunately finished P6, so it wasn't in the cards for him. But we at least, I don't know, last year there wasn't too much that went down. Strategy was pretty standard with 2 red stints and 2 blacks, and I don't know. I mean, the only stat I'm looking at from last year was crazy is that Graham, that no other driver since 1946 has gone 100 races in a row without winning and then won after that. And he was at 128 last year, so add 16 to that, he's in the in the low 140s. So that's the biggest storyline coming into this, outside of, is Palou going to win 3 straight here? So looking ahead, I guess we can get into the driving winner prediction, unless you have any strategy notes.
No, I think it's a usual 3-stopper of this one. We'll see how the Reds fare, but yeah, I think this is going to be very much a track position type of race. Again, a bit more open than a street course in terms of room to pass, and obviously they'll use the main straight as the biggest long portion, followed by Holman Boulevard on the backside of the golf course. But yeah, I think qualifying will be pretty big and pretty important factor here.
Yeah, so looking at our race winning predictions, so team average finish here, Ganassi takes the cake. Obviously, they've won the last 4 races here, so that's no surprise. While McLaren and Penske are just right behind them in the mid-9s. But then RLL actually has 2-point average better finish than Andretti and 5-point average finish better than MSR. So really, like, that shows you how impressive they've been here when you look across the schedule. I mean, we usually don't even bother including them on most of these graphics. So, you know, you look over at Rahal and you know, he fits right in with that as well. Average finish of 8.33. Always able to perform, and especially the last couple years. This is since 2022, but there's obviously there have been 6 races since then.
Yeah,
so
a lot of
data in a very recent amount of time. But you look down the line, Will Power and Dixon, the old heads, have been great here. Palou, his average is a little high just because his first 2 races were a P10 and a P17. Obviously, that's a little deceptive. But Lundgaard, obviously with RLL, was really good here, and McLaren's even better here, especially with the qualifying and obviously race finish. So another really good chance for him to come back. And with how good O'Ward has been, you know, his average finish is 8.5, but he qualifies really well here. I'm excited to see if they have something to say, as they've just been knocking on the door for a win for a while now.
Absolutely.
So, Alan, go ahead and, obviously no Palou, but go ahead and give me
that's a default for the rest of the season.
Give me your kind of your reach, and then your kind of your more expected winner if you had to. Choose.
I think reach, digging out of the bag here, maybe Fro. I mean, Meyershank has qualified pretty consistently well this year, and he just pulled off a pretty solid street course. So I could see him making a run up there. Now, I think you kind of saw my thunder a little bit, but Lundgaard was my immediate pick for a non-Palou winner. Has had success in the streets, has success on the roads this year. McLaren's got decent pace, so that would be of intrigue.
Yeah.
What do you got?
You talk about guys that are hot. I mean, Lundgaard put together a great race on a road course, and Rahal has been hot as well. I mean, I have to pick Rahal for the off-the-wall pick just because he's been so close. But you talk about more predictable finishers. I mean, I feel like O'Ward. I know he finished second last year, and he's been qualifying really well here. And it just feels like he's knocking on the door. And you know, this competition with Lundgaard has really brought something out of him. And he seems to just be a little discontent with his results lately, even though he's been, I thought, a very mature driver the last 2 seasons. And hopefully, you know, it comes together when you talk about he's been more of an oval guy, but can he find something into Indy GP? I like that pick right now, but outside of him, I mean, Dixon always is in the fold with the different, if he can pull off a different strategy, but typically the only reason he pulled off that strategy last time was because he got wrecked on the first lap. So I don't really think there's as much creativity there, but when you talk about pace, Mr. Fast Hands, Mr. Quick Hands, whatever, I think O'Ward has a real chance.
No, I think it's one of those, like, if it isn't going to be race for first, it's going to be race for the mid-pack. So I'm hoping at least have that battle be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like we said, obviously Ganassi has dominated here the last couple of years, but the parity between them, McLaren, Penske, and RLL has been fairly big since they've been racing here. But since the Aero Screen, Andretti got those first 2 wins in 21, and VK with ECR, which is pretty crazy. And then now we're kind of in an era where Ganassi has found their way. So we'll see if anything can mix it up. I don't have high hopes, but it's nice to talk about it and get excited.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, next time we'll be talking to you people will be for the granddaddy of them all, the Indy 500. Crazy to say we're almost there. I'm finishing up school here. And just excited for May.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, I'm Jake Langdon.
And I'm Alan Langdon.
And we'll talk to you in May, fans.